Hey guys, Starkey Cat. So we're going to go over my mid-range warrior guide, and the way we're going to do this is I'm going to go through the entire deck list. I'm going to talk about potential tech choices, budget options, why I picked the cards that I did pick, and then we're going to play 3 games. I'm going to just do 3 straight games unedited. The reason why I'm going to do that is I often find with these guide videos, people often cherry pick the games they choose, and I don't think that's very useful. So if we lose 3 games in a row, we lose 3 games in a row, and you'll see how this deck loses. So first we're just going to run through the list, and then we'll at the end talk about why I picked what I did pick. So double execute, pretty straightforward, best removal in the game for this kind of a list. It's cheap. We don't run shield slams because we just can't fit it in. It's a very tight list. Double fiery war axe, just amazing. Double slam, some people might be surprised with this. It's very handy. We more often than not get the card draw on it. We run as a Drake because this is a dragon list. So having the spell damage makes it very handy. It does double up. Slam cannot go face, so don't try and go face with it. But it's just great for picking up minions in the early game. More often than not, you just use it to kill that pesky little Sorcerer's Apprentice or Knife Juggler. Don't be overly greedy with the card draw. If it gets you a clean kill, it gets you a clean kill. Alex Stra's champion, really powerful minion. More often than not, if you can coin this out into a Fiery War Axe on turn 2, or vice versa, you completely control the board, and there's just no recovering from that kind of an opener. Fairy Dragon is surprisingly powerful in this meta. It's very good versus rogues because they can't backstab it. It's also very good versus mages and warlocks because they can't dart bomb / frostbolt it. It's just a resilient creature. It fills up our dragon count. And it just, we needed more early game. It naturally fits the curve. You could potentially replace it with like a loot hoarder, but then we don't run enough dragons, and at that point you're playing a different kind of a list, so not really replaceable. Bash, a very underrated card in my opinion. Works well with the Azadrake. It's defensive. This card alone makes Aggro Shami a really easy matchup for us. It's just solid. Also, you can go face with it, so often give you surprise burst lethal. BGH is BGH. I think 1 is mandatory in this meta. Double Blackwing Technician, very crucial. One could argue that 1 Blackwing Technician, 1 brand would be superior. I'll go into that later, but for now, this is just a much better body. It's very strong on curve, and it just fills up our mid-range plays. Fierce Monkey, and another amazing underrated card in my opinion. Very strong. This is like the life coach's favourite card at the moment. It's just defensive. It often gets 2-for-1 value. Brilliant. Death Spite is Death Spite, much like Fiery War Axe. It's just mandatory to basically any warrior list. Double Twilight Guardian. This is a surprisingly good card in this list. You would look at it and go, well, if this plays like mid-range Hunter, then why do you want such a defensive option? Because this plays like mid-range Hunter, we want such a defensive option. Basically, this makes aggro matchups even stronger. It makes zoo matchups like this card plus Fierce Monkey is part of the reason why this deck does so well against other minion-based decks. The one weakness of this deck is we don't have like AoE removal outside of the second charge of Death Spite, and having those high HP taunts are how we like control a bad board front. Really, really crucial. I tried cutting it and running Corcoran Elites and other 4-drops and Shredders, and 1, it lacked the dragon, so it made the dragon cards more inconsistent, and 2, not having that strong taunt and that strong body really hurt us. This is also amazing versus priests. Azadrake, as already discussed, this deck runs just like mid-range Hunter. Having the extra card draw is amazing because we often run dead on cards, turn 6+. It gives spell power buff ups, fills up the dragon curve, just 10 out of 10. Double Blackwing Corruptor, just part of the package, often gives surprise lethal, much like Bash, and with conjunction with Bash, you can do really big burst. 2 Draconid Crusher. Originally, I was running 1 Crusher and 1 Varian Rin. While it was very powerful in the more control-focused matchups, lowering my curve made me more consistent versus aggro, and in general, I prefer this even in the control matchups because it just makes the deck so much more aggressive and just so dangerous. This is kind of like the Savannah High main. Like, you play this, they have to deal with it. More often times they can't. If they do deal with it, then they've removed removal for your other late game threats. Really, really powerful. Dr. Balanced. Yeah. Grom, this is a warrior deck. It's the perfect finisher. Just works beautifully, even if you just have to play him as removal. Like, not more often than not, but, you know, probably about half the times I will just play it to trade, and that will secure me the win. Onyxia, this is like the one contentious spot in the deck. I'll go through why I run this, and then I'll go through the options afterwards, what it could be. So I've had a few people spectating me on ladder, and they often go, oh, why don't you run Alexstrasza, you run Grom? Nearly every game, by the time you're at turn 9 plus, you have them below 15 health. The games where you don't have them below 15 health, having Alexstrasza would maybe heal you if you're like losing very badly to an aggro matchup, in which case you're probably going to lose anyway, or you will stabilize with armor anyway. So that's kind of that. If you say, why not Nefarian? The issue with Nefarian is that you play him, you then need to get 2 spells, and those are random. If those are 2 burn spells, it's arguably better. But with Onyxia, you get 6 damage worth of whelps, and you always get 6 damage worth of whelps, unless you have a full build. And if you have a full board, and you play Onyxia, you've won the game. Like, if you have a full board by turn 9, you've just won the game regardless, so losing out on the whelps doesn't really matter. Nearly every time you play Onyxia, unless it's against Twisting Nether or a Light Bomb, you just won the game. They can't ever clear both Onyxia and all of the whelps. The whelps secure so many games. More often than not, I just play it, they try and clear it, and they just concede. It is so crucial. The whelps get you lethal more times than not. Really, really powerful. Again, if you're running a budget version of this list, then Nefarian is good enough. But if you are running Nefarian and you just sort of lack that late game finish, this is huge. So if you don't have it, run Nefarian in a budget version, otherwise run Onyxia. Now, the one card which is potentially better than Onyxia, and this will depend on if you run into more aggro or more control matchups, is actually Deathwing. And I'm not trolling when I say that. This list runs 3 to 5, depending on if you activate them, BGH targets. So by the time you play Onyxia or Deathwing, they've more often than not used their BGHs. The times this deck loses to control, because usually you just out-aggro control too much and they just can't handle it, is they get that taunt wall. It's when you go against, for example, a Reno Warlock, you got them to 10 HP, they Bran heal botted. You got them down to 5 HP, they Reno'd, and then you've got lethal on board, and then they do like sludge taunt, and you're like, ah. It's when they have that sludge up that you're like, how do I get past that when I've only got the 1 minion? Having the Deathwing, boosh. You still have like the half of the sludge that you need to clear afterwards, but it's arguably better than the Onyxia at that point. So if you're running into lots of Warlock, then you could sub out the Onyxia, run Deathwing. If you're running against more aggro, I prefer the Onyxia because the aggro can never clear Onyxia and the bodies. Also, again, this plays much like mid-range Hunter, as I keep saying. So your hand is nearly always dead, so it's very rare that you would discard multiple cards. Mid-range Hunter has run Deathwing before to great success. The only bad thing about Deathwing in that list was that the only other BGH target it ran was Dr. Boom. With this list running 3 to 5 BGH targets, there is some merit to running it. I still much prefer Onyxia, but the option is there. So now you're all yelling, why aren't you running Bran? This is Dragon, you've got loads of battle cries. The reason I don't play Bran is, again, it plays like mid-range Hunter. You often have empty hands, or near empty hands. So you won't always draw into it in the optimal turn. If you top deck it, it's not that great. So you either drop a late game threat to have potential for combo, in which case you remove your late game, which is never good. Or you remove a 3-drop. Let's say you remove a Fierce Monkey, you make your aggro matchups worse. Fierce Monkey is what makes you so good versus aggro, makes you what's so good versus like Zoo Warlock and Hunter lists. So it just makes that worse. You remove Blackwing Technician, you make your Priest matchup worse. Again, it's just a very strong creature. Worst case scenario is Blackwing Technician is a 2/4. Worst case scenario of Bran is you play it as a 2/4, and the worst case is you don't have a trigger with it. Like, you can't combo it. So worst case, they're the same. Best case, you might get a slightly more powerful Blackwing Technician, but you would run one less to put it in, if that makes sense. Or a Twilight, like the Dream, yeah? The Dream is that you had an opening hand of, you went second, you had Fiery War Axe, Alexstrasza's Champion, Bran, Twilight Guardian. You coined out the War Axe on turn 1, you killed their Zombie Chow. You play the Alexstrasza Champion on turn 2, you kill their 2-drop. You then play the Bran. They can't kill it. And you then play a Twilight Guardian with 4 attack. I mean, it's kind of just underwhelming. I'd rather have a 3-5 and a 3-6 rather than a 2-4 and a 4-6, if that makes sense. The only sort of impactful battle cry to duplicate would be Corruptor, potentially Draconoid Crusher, but that is very situational, and you make your board worse earlier. For Blackwing Corruptor, this deck only runs 4 draw cards, 2 of which are situational, so the draw isn't consistent enough. Dr. Boom is arguably good, but that's a turn 10 play. This deck doesn't really play till turn 10, or if it does, that's like the lethal turn. No, if you want to play Bran in a Dragon list, play either Malilock or Dragon Priest. It just doesn't fit in Warrior. It's too tight of a list. If you look at Mid-Range Hunter, and I keep saying it, they usually have like 1 to 2 tech slots. It's a very tight list. This is much of the same. So the one thing which would actually be very helpful, and I might make this change further down the line, would be 1 Owl. Because, as I said, Sludge is kind of like, if you are in the late game wars and you draw into a Grommash or a Nixia and you throw it down and they get a Sludge, it's just like, ugh. At least with the Nixias, the Whelps can clear through it. But anyway, so I would probably drop... I would either drop 1 Slam for an Owl, or I'd drop a late game threat. I wouldn't want to touch either of my 2 drops. You could remove 1 Fairy Dragon, but I feel like that would hurt your Dragon synergy too much, because at the moment it runs 9, I want to say. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, it runs 9, and usually 9 is enough in decks with lots of draw. This deck doesn't have loads of draw, and 2 of your dragons are early game plays, so you can see it more as only running 7 dragons. So I wouldn't want to touch the Fairy Dragons. So yeah, that would be maybe play with Deathwing if you go against more control. Maybe put an Owl in instead of maybe a Fairy Dragon, maybe a Slam. And that's kind of that. So that's the deck list. That's that. And now I'm going to show you how to sort of play it. Now, the one thing which, and this is why I like this deck so much, is that it's just consistent. It's a very consistent deck. You're not going to start getting crazy like 80% win percentages. You can consistently pull 55 to 65% win rate with this deck with very little, not skill, but it's a very easy to pilot deck. The skill in this deck is much the same as the skill in other mid-range decks like Mid-Range Shaman or Mid-Range Hunter, is knowing when to go aggressive. That is the really key defining factor. Knowing how to mulligan correctly and knowing when to go aggressive. So now we're on that, let's talk about the mulligan. Mage is quite a good matchup for this deck. You will lose if they just get crazy RNG, but that's just how Tempo Mage works. Freeze Mage, you're pretty favoured. I will keep 1 Slam just as a way to clear a Sorcerer's Apprentice, stop it getting out of hand, in case I don't draw into a Fiery Warhacks. I will throw back the Blackwing Technician. And you basically want a hard mulligan for Fiery Warhacks, Alex Raza's Champion, and a Fairy Dragon. Usually I would throw everything back. The reason, that's a pretty good hand. The reason why I went for keeping the Slam is just in case of a Sorcerer's Apprentice, because Mage can be so crazy. Okay, with this I'm going to coin out the Champion. If your opening hand is a War Axe and a Champion, I would nearly always coin out. If they play a minion, you coin out the War Axe, use the War Axe to clear. If they don't play minion, you coin out the Champion. But anyway, that's fine. I always like to play off the top of my, like if I have duplicates, I always like to throw off the top just because it frustrates the opponent because they think that you're always top decking your answers. But, okay, that's really nice. Slow start. The fact he played Flame Cannon makes me think it's Tempo Mage, which just got a bad opener. And because of that, I'm going to just keep playing more creatures. If it was Freeze or Control, there would maybe be some legitimacy to armoring up, but we're not about that life. Okay, so it's probably Control, or it's just a bad list. This is rank 5, so you do still see some wonky lists in there, usually run by me. But this is not one of them. This is one of my more consistent decks. Well, a much more consistent deck. One thing that I tend to, like, ever since I first got Legend, I've stopped tryharding with ladder. You'll notice this yourself if you care about You know, when you first care about getting to Legend, you're doing like the most effective list possible. Once you've gotten Legend a couple of times, you kind of just like playing for fun. So what I often do is I like try hard to like rank 2, I then get frustrated, and then I play fun decks to like rank 10, and then I have to play decks like this, which are just consistent, grind back to like rank 4, get bored, play a fun deck, and that's kind of much of this season has been bouncing between like rank 3 and rank 7, and I just do this like back and forth. But yeah, the reason why I traded that way is because it has the hero power protection, by the way, earlier. We could play on curve, but I'm scared of board clears. Playing on curve would be trading this into that, throwing that out, and armoring. I don't want to over-commit to a board, so I'm just going to Death Spite. It is playing off curve, but he doesn't really have any answers to this. And I feel like the deck we're going to would run something like Blizzards and Flame Strikes. So I just don't want to overcommit.
I have no time for games.
Okay. See, now I just want to go full face, play Draconoid Crusher, YOLO. I think we will do that play, actually. Because we have the Corruptor. And we have him so low. Like, he has to have Reno at this point. I'm going to hold the Death Charge. I'm not going to kill the Sylvanas. Like, we have 2 slams. We have the Corruptor. He could maybe do some really cool play where he like wipes my board and kills his Sylvanas and steals the 9/9, but I just don't see it happening. Yeah, you can't pink that. Okay, Frost Nova. I think he's just lost the game at this point. He needs to do like some Reno shenanigans. Maybe drop a duplicate down. Okay, I'm assuming that's duplicate. How do you want to handle this? I think I just hero power. I'm expecting a flame strike. I think he wants to ping this, sack that into that. So if I were to kill it, it would kill this and this, put that to 1 HP. He probably steals that. I'm just gonna do that. Do that. Pass. I could have slammed, I could have traded, I could have done a few things, but I'm assuming that he can't full clear. Why would you ping that? His best case scenario would be if he ran Explosive Sheep, which you would do in a list like this. You could like Explosive Sheep clear most of the board, then like Frostbolt the 2/4 first, so you guarantee steal the 9/9. The reason I'm playing the way I'm playing is that I just don't think he can do a full clear. It's very risky, but I think it will pay off. Okay, Kel'Thuzad, that's kind of bad. What does he got? That's fine. Right, so this seems like a really easy play, but this is kind of crucial. I'm assuming that's block. So I think I'm just going to check for block. If I will slam that to start with. Okay, that's pretty nice. I think I'm going to slam it again. Execute. Okay, so we can full clear his board. So we check for block. It's block. We don't sack. No, we do sack that into that. We play another one of those. We want everything to be damaged. Do that. Execute it. It's 1 and 3. That's fine. He now needs to heal up. We have Doctor Beam in hand. you might be kind of confused by some of the plays I made with that Sylvanas. The reason why I played so riskily is my health total in comparison to his is that the only way that these plays could like desperately backfire is if he ran double fireball frostbolt, he steals my 9/9, goes face 9/9, and then he lethals me. Because we're not quite at turn 10, the fact that he hasn't played Emperor giving me reductions, I'm assuming it's a Reno list, so I don't think he has double fireball even. The fact he's running Kel'Thuzad, he may not even run fireball, period. Do we have lethal? Yes, we do. So yeah, that's the first game. I will do 2 more. This deck does, as I said, it does amazingly well versus mages. It only struggles versus the tempo mage if they get the perfect RNG, but that's how that deck works. Everyone loses to a perfect RNG tempo mage. I nearly got my second Fairy Warwick, so I can go full golden roleplay. I'm a bit of a sucker for the full golden decks. So yeah, one other thing which I'll mention now, we wait for an opponent. I'll also be uploading deck spotlights for a control rogue and an aggro rogue, which I've used this and last season at quite high success, at good ranks. So, you know, if you're interested in that, maybe subscribe, check those out. But right, so we've got Alexstrasza and a Fairy Dragon, so that's already a pretty good opener. Druid is, again, it's pretty fair. The reason why I would say fair rather than favoured, because I think in general it is favoured for you, is when they get those early like double innovate plays, like innovate, coin, Emperor, there's nothing you can do. It's very rare that you have both a like execute and a war axe in your opening hand, because you never mulligan for executes. You could argue that maybe you should always keep one execute versus a druid, just in case of the crazy innovate shenanigans. But I usually just take those games as a loss anyway. But usually I think we're favoured in this matchup. I'd say it's probably about a 55 to 60%. I find mid-range easier than aggro, funnily enough. The reason being is that sometimes this deck can run a little slow. Usually this deck does quite well versus aggro because you can stabilise in the later turns. But aggro druid is just so explosive with the way that they can just combo you anyway, that you can never really stabilize against them. You need that early board. I played the Taunt there rather than the Technician just because I'm not 100% on what kind of list it is. Now that I do know what list it is, I kind of wish that I had played the Technician because it would have traded favorably with the Shredder. And I probably rushed that play a bit because I was talking. But we can still stabilize, it's fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw our 2-drop into it. Ouch, that's painful. We're then going to throw our second 2-drop into it. So yeah, we can see that in that case I would have been better off playing the Technician. And also you can argue that saving the Taunt for later is better against Force of Nature, so that would have been definitely a superior play. I will misplay a little bit when I'm doing these like commentary style videos, so excuse that. But yeah, Punish is real. Fortunately we didn't draw into a dragon, so we're going to have to do this, which feels bad, man. Right now, I want to play something anyway. Because I want to play something anyway, I'm going to trade this. I don't want him to get value. I don't want him to trade into a 2/4. This deck, I know I keep just saying mid-range Hunter over and over again, plays very similar. It's important that you play everything every turn. Even if you don't get the synergy, just try and play something. Why would you run this over mid-range Hunter since you keep mentioning it, Taki Cat? One, it's a warrior, so it's good if you need to do warrior dailies, or as me, you're trying to grind out a golden warrior. But I think this does much better versus aggro Shami, and aggro Shami is quite prevalent on ladder. I also find this deck does decently well versus Paladin, whereas Paladin crushes Hunter at the moment. So I think this just has some better matchups, although the win rate won't be as spectacular overall. I think the good thing about Hunter decks is that Hunter decks can always just like curve out and they can beat basically anything. This deck is fairly similar, and ouch, that curve is awful. Let's think about this play a little bit. I really care about board control versus Druid, so I'm just going to do the boring play. I am going to play one of these anyway because it's just got a lot of health. Not health, attack, and it just threatens a decent amount of damage. So yeah, I feel like it has better matchups in this current meta. And as I said, you know, it's something you can always tweak around. Adding the one owl in, adding the one Deathwing, could be pretty huge to increase those certain matchups even more. Okay, I think he has swipe. The fact that he wanted to target that implies he has swipe, because this play is very weak to swipe. Okay, he wants to play the Dr. on curve. That's understandable. Oh. Okay, so we can corrupt to the 7/7 and trade the 5/4 in. I think we have to, because, you know, he's got combo next time. Yeah. That is the one bad thing about dragon lists, is you just sometimes have that thing where you don't curve out very well. I'm gonna clear the boombot. Don't kill that. Oh, thank God for that. That would have been really BM. I always like to clear the board as much as possible versus druids. I could have gone face and tried to race them, but I just think that's, in general, a terrible idea. That's... feels bad, man. Hopefully I draw into one of my threats. I have a lot of them in this deck. Slam, okay, that's something. We're fishing for an execute, and as you can see, I run a deck tracker, by the way. This is why I run deck trackers. It's just good to know the percentage of drawing into things. So if I play the Azure into the slam, it hits that slightly harder, and it gives us 2 chances for the execute, so I'm going to go for it. Okay. Let's pray. Yes. Yes. Okay. Perfectly. We're finally curving again. We've had so many bad mana efficient plays. Like, the chances were pretty good, because there was like a 10% chance that we drew an execute, so we have 2 in the deck, and then we had 2 draws at it. So it was like a 40% chance or something. We can't activate the taunt. If we could activate the taunt, I'd actually consider it, just because it is a druid, and he hasn't used his innovates, so there's like potential for innovate double savage, and he definitely has lethal if he has that. He's 2 off if he just has normal. Like, normal combo is 14 damage, and then he has the extra 6 because he's got the Azure Drake, so that's 20 damage. Hopefully we draw into a dragon, so we can activate. Oof. Right, hopefully that kills the Azure Drake. No. Ah, that's punished. Right, we really need to activate a taunt now. Like, I wish I could cut Dr. Boom in a way, because boom bots are boom bots, and they will just lose you games. They win you games as well, but it's a really frustrating card. It's kind of like, it's not as bad as like an Implosion or Crackle, but it's something which affects every deck. Really not a big fan of it. So he's probably got this game, to be honest, unless the next draw is a Grom or an Onyxia. I think we've pretty much lost. Grom would be good, even though we don't have an activator, because we can use it to trade. But the fact that he still has double combo, and with this late into the game, yeah, he's probably just going to use that to clear. I would use that to clear and punch a bunch of face damage. You're not going to clear at all? I guess you don't need to at that point, because you've got lethal. So yeah. Okay, so 1 for 1. Okay, so we'll get the golden warlocks the next time. So that's hype. You'll see me completing the golden deck. So yeah, you can sort of see when you don't curve out that well in a favored not favored, but an even matchup like that, you just lose. That's what stops this deck from, you know, reaching the crazy 70% win rates that you'll see some other lists running. Like, if you're good at piloting Oil Rogue, it's very easy to achieve absurd win rates with that deck. But you know, this deck, it plays a lot like Zoo, it plays a lot like mid-range, so it is limited to drawing well, and that is the strength of it. But it's consistent enough that you'll always have a positive win rate, even if you're bad at piloting. So it's very good for that, and it's also fairly budget. Like, if you look at the list, assuming that you're subbing out Onyxia for Nefarian, you only need adventure cards, and then like the mandatory sort of like Doctor Boom, and most people have Twilight Guardians, so you know it's pretty cheap. The reason why I'm kind of hovering about that bash is just the potential of a Huffer. If I was going second, I'd definitely keep it. I think I need to throw it away. I'm assuming, I always assume it's Face Hunter, because I see very few mid-range players these days. I think I'm going to keep the bash. It's very punishing if I draw badly, so like if I draw like this. So that was perhaps a greedy, yeah, that was a very greedy play. I think in nearly every case you just want a full mulligan for your 2-drops. And I've only got about, between all of the versions, I have probably about 100 games with this list. This current version, I have, I think, 50 games. This, like, current variation. So I'm still not 100% on the mulligan. Right, well, you know, we still have quite a lot of potential for stabilizing, because we've got, you know, 4-player, 5-player, we can activate our taunt. If he is mid-range, we have got both BGH and Execute, which is pretty powerful. Okay, it's kind of a slow start. Oh, that's really nice. He's already used his coin, so I'm not going to kill the creeper. Versus a hunter, if I don't know if they're mid-range or not, I will prioritize denying beast synergy. But at 3 mana, there's no beast synergy that people play. I know there's Stable Master, but like, Stable Master in this case probably wouldn't even be that good, because usually you want to kill your creeper to get the 1/1s. And if he, like, he should trade. Okay, so he didn't get the Huffer, and we kept the bash for the Huffer plays. Yeah, I don't know why I kept that, to be honest, now I think about it. Right, I feel a bit bad about just playing the Twilight Guardian, because his board trades into it and lives. But I just have to play it. I could bash Execute, which is kind of weak. Maybe it's not that weak. No, I think it buys us time. I might regret this play. But if I just played the Twilight Guardian and then he were to play a Houndmaster and buff up the Leok. Yeah. Okay, so this is a slower list. Okay, I'm glad I went that direction. Then yeah, okay, I could have still executed it, but it would just be very punishing. Okay. I kind of want to stick on curve. I'm assuming freeze then? Freeze or bear? Freeze. Okay, so we're in good standing. I think we can stabilize this game, assuming we just curve out well. You could maybe consider running, if you wanted to be like really wacky, you could run Hungry Dragons and maybe drop one Crusher, one Draconic Crusher and one non-Hungry Dragon, just to even out your curve to be a bit more weighted to early game. But don't do that. You could, but just don't. I kind of want to play the champion to trade on hero power. Because if I do that, I get to... If I play the Guardian, it gets skill commanded, and he throws a 1/1 token into it. And I take 5 face damage. I get to armor up both ways, but I think I prefer this play. I'm being very greedy with my taunts, and it's probably not a good idea because the fact that this is a slower list means he probably runs Owl. And the longer I hold on to my taunts, the more likely he is to play Owl. But next turn I can do Twilight Guardian and Fist Monkey, and there's a very low chance I might draw into a Doctor Boom. You never know. Like, you've always got to pray that you draw into the Boom. But like, if you look at him, he's pretty much played on curve every turn, and he's only just now starting to get that face damage in. So it kind of shows the power of this deck. Oh, Finley. That's one thing I did want to talk about. Since that was one thing, I've had a few people saying, oh, why didn't you run Finley Mergleton? The reason why I don't run Finley is, again, this is a very tight list. To add it in, you'd have to cut something, is the main thing. And even if you gained a 30, like even if you gained another slot, because if I wanted to cut anything, as I said, I'd add an Owl over Finley. I think Owl is a higher priority for this deck list. But I find the hero power surprisingly good. The hero power is what makes aggro games winnable, because you have stronger board than aggro, but sometimes you don't draw well. When you curve perfectly, you've won the game anyway. When you don't curve perfectly, the hero power buys you time. Versus control matchups, the hero power, again, it lets you play that slightly longer game. And you have as many threats in this list as like a standard control warrior. So you generally do okay. And I think we've just kind of lost at this point. I'm going to assume he runs Bear, because I don't think many people are running double freezing trap these days, and I want to draw into a slam or a bash. We've got, you know, a 15.8% chance to draw into removal. Punish. Okay, we've probably lost. It's a bit of a risk to do that play. Sorry for the creaky chair. It's a bit of a risk to do that play instead of doing, for example, a Draconoid Crusher into Armor Up, which would have given me more threat on the board, but I assumed at that point I was pretty much dead anyway, and I needed removal. Because as you can see, yeah. There's the Hounds. And you can't win them all. That's a shame. But we did get full golden list, so you know it's not all bad. Bit of a shame to, you know, go 1-2 in a deck spotlight, but I think it's better to do that than to cherry pick. I could have only showed you 3 perfect games, and that's the list again for reference. I could have shown you only 3 perfect games, but I think it's better to show how I would have parted it, so you can say, well, no, you're wrong, you should have done X, or you should have, you know, kept the bash in your mulligan. But I think it's more important to see how a deck loses more so than how the deck wins, because in a deck like this, which is fairly obvious how it wins, is you just curve out naturally. You know, you don't necessarily need someone to show you how to curve. The main thing is to stick to the very strict mulligan of if it's not Alex Giles' champion, it's not Fairy Warwick, you throw it back, regardless of if it's bash and you're afraid of getting huffed. Yeah, sometimes you need to ignore your own instincts. So I'm Cat, this is the deck, thanks for watching. As I said earlier, I will be doing more deck spotlights. The next one will be my control rogue list, which I'm currently rocking a 70% win rate with, let me bring it up 1 second. I think I've got like 30 games played on it. Oh, sorry. We have a 69% win rate between, I think I was around rank 3 at the time, with 29 games played in the final version. So you'll be seeing that later on today. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Have a good night.